Hey everyone, I just wanted to welcome everybody to my Facebook live series, the March series on burnout. We're getting to the end of March and we're in the last part 4 today. Really excited to see like I said, if those previous episodes, if you guys have seen them, were helpful. Those of you who've seen them, give me a thumbs up. I want to wait a couple of seconds here to see who's going to be coming on. I've already got a couple of people popping on. I'm sure we're going to be seeing some more faces, hopefully some new faces this week. Drop a comment below if you're watching live. I always love to see who's watching these. If you've seen some of the previous ones, even just tap down the episode. Was it 1, 2, 3? This is episode 4. As I've labeled it in the Facebook, it's a new hope. This is the episode that, layered on top of the lessons that you learned in parts 1, 2, and 3, will definitely help you to break through this burnout barrier and start to get some wins. Okay? Hey, Christopher, great to see you here, man. Really appreciate it. Ben, love it. I love seeing you guys, especially from the DEA here. You guys are all growth minded. 1 and 2. Chris, can you tell me did you try any of them? Were you able to put those into practice and see any kind of results? I'm going to do this week, like I do every week. I'm going to start with our question, of the day. The first question for today is, when was the last time you did something hard, right? That's a question I think we all have to ask ourselves every once in a while, because I think as we go through life, we think things are going to get easier, right? We're kind of sold this bill of health that's like, go to school, get your degree, get a good job, get married, have kids, buy your house, everything is going to be fine, right? Everything's going to be fine. That doesn't work out as we start to go through life. We start to realize that every stage has its wins and every stage has its challenges, right? But I do think that we can get into, hey James, how's it going? Glad to see you here. I do think that we get into a point in life where we stop doing hard things. We're tired of it. School was a drag, or apprenticeship was a drag, or paying your dues sucked. Those first years of having babies really sucks. No sleep, sleep deprivation. Climbing up into the work world sucks. Climbing the corporate ladder sucks, right? Going through different relationships can be an up and a down experience, right? And so I think with all of those things, we get to a point in life where we just want to coast. So the question I have today is, when was the last time you did something hard? Something that challenged you, stretched you outside of the normal, right? Caused you to learn. And that's kind of what we're going to be going over today, is the final piece of the puzzle in order to get out of burnout, right? And it's this piece of growth, okay? But before we do that, before we dive into that, I kind of want to go over some of the concepts that we've talked about over the last few weeks. Burnout. What is it? And I like to simplify things. I don't want things to be too complicated, right? Basically, it's we feel overworked and underappreciated. That's pretty much what it comes down to, right? We're ending up balancing our lives with have-tos outweighing the want-tos, right? This comes from our lack of balance. I went through that in episode 2, where I talked about our balance, how to balance our lives, how to check in with our core values, which a lot of us don't do very often, actually. I just did that exercise today again. I love to check in with my core values so I can see, are the decisions I'm making, are the things I'm doing filling me up, or are they counter, or are they, not aligned with what I want to be doing in my life? Last week I went over obligation versus intention, and this is a big one, especially as we start to layer responsibility upon responsibility upon responsibility, right? This one too is, keep it front of mind. Are you doing it because you have to do something or because you want to do something, right? And I don't know if you guys can see the bottom here, but the symptoms of burnout are pretty, they're pretty evident. You'll see it right away. You're tired more. You're cynical. You've lost your motivation, right? You've stopped wanting to do the things that you want to do. You start to blame more. You start to take on that role of a victim a lot more when you're in that burnout mode. You complain a lot. Oh, yeah, hi, that's me. right? Big time complainer. The other one too is, you feel trapped. You feel like you can't get out. You kind of feel like a boxed in animal, right? You find that you're alone or lonely most of the time. Even if people are around you, people reaching out, you're kind of withdrawing from them, right? You're putting yourself in a situation where you're cutting out those supports. And at the end of the day, you feel like you failed, or this sense of being defeated, right? And that's really what we're talking about here. Burnout is kind of giving up, right? In a lot of ways, it's this idea of I quit, right? And it kind of goes to where does it start, right? And I'll talk about the complaining one because I think this is a really great, story that I used to do. I love my rants, and anyone who's known me for the last 20 years knows that I can go off on the best rants, especially after a couple of beers, after the end of a long week. I can, Friday night, it's a perfect time to just start teeing off. Does anyone else resonate with that? Like, who out there loves to have a couple of beers and then just bitch, right? We all do it. And I found that it's one of those addictive qualities. The more you do it, the more people around you start doing it, and it becomes this kind of mob. No comment. That's right, James. No comment. Like, you and I have not been in that situation ever. But it becomes kind of like this mob effect where we all start to complain, and then the whole environment starts to take on a negative atmosphere, right? Well, when we carry that with us on a daily basis, if we're not creating something positive, it doesn't have to be a Friday. No, Steve, it can be any day of the week. But it's one of those things where if you layer one thing on top of another and it's only negative, only cynical, only fatalistic, at the end of the day, what kind of positive lens do you have that you can view the world in, right? You're always going to veer more towards the negative, right? And I think this comes really from a very simple concept, and it's basically that it's all in your head, right? Very simple. I'm going to move this back a bit. I'm going to just kind of highlight Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I don't know if most of you know this one, but it's a very popular concept that as human beings, we have certain stages that we try to accomplish, right? The very first two, those of us in the first world really don't have to worry about this too much. It's our physiological needs and our safety needs. Do you have a roof over your head? Are you protected? Are bandits going to come? Regardless of what the media says, the wall's going to hold, and you're not going to get invaded by, people from the south or people from the north like me. These, are pretty much covered. As you move up in this triangle, in this pyramid, you start to go to the next stages, which is love and belonging, which is, finding a spouse, having children, having a network of people, belonging to a community, right? And I think this is something that we've started to move away from, and especially during COVID, isolation becomes more of an issue. And then the other one is self-esteem and esteem, like doing something, being productive, contributing. But the last piece is this self-actualization. And this is where I think a lot of us end up. We really knock off these, parts of the pyramid as we're moving up. And we get to this esteem, love, and belonging, and we kind of hang out here for a long time. But then we start to become dissatisfied because our base nature is to move to the next level. And the next level is to find your purpose. And this is where I believe burnout really happens. It's not because we're doing too much. I think it's a function of us doing too little. Okay, let me explain. When we get into a routine, when we go to work, have a family, have the kids, our brains are designed to find the most efficient way of doing things. And we get to a point where it just becomes the routine, and it becomes, just rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. We've all had that feeling of Groundhog Day, right? Like, chime in below if you haven't ever had that feeling, every day is the same. And so because of that, our brain kind of just, rinses and just goes into this cycle. Drive to work, come home, brush teeth at the same time, eat dinner at the same time, do the same thing on the weekends. And we start to get bored. And our mind starts to get bored. Our mind needs to be challenged. And because of that, it will look for problems. And this is where it happens. I mentioned earlier complaining. Well, complaining is just your brain looking for problems, right? For most of us, we've got all of these things covered, and yet our brain is still looking for problems. And that's when we start to feel that things aren't good enough, that what we're doing doesn't matter, that all of our effort isn't being appreciated, and that why are we doing this? It's almost like we want to create a challenge for us to solve. Now let that sink in. We're creating an opportunity for our brain to solve a problem that doesn't exist. That's why I say it's on your head. Burnout, even though it's real, it's a figment of your creation. And I'm going to give you today just one thing to think about, and this is the key to escaping burnout. And I saved it to the very end. What is the solution? And it's get uncomfortable. That's why I asked in the beginning, what was the last time you've done a hard thing? Every time we do something hard, we grow. When you're a baby, it takes a lot of effort to learn to walk. And I saw it with both my children. They get up, they fall down. They get up, they fall down. That process builds their muscles. It gets them practicing their balance so that they can eventually walk. It's a process. But when we get to the point in our lives where we're no longer challenging ourselves, we're either growing or we're regressing. If you don't challenge your brain to stretch, to create something new, to go after something that's difficult, it will atrophy, or it will start to pick apart the problems of your current life. My wife doesn't love me. My kids don't listen to me. My boss is a jerk. I hate traffic. These were all, all of the things that have gone through my head. I don't make enough money. I don't have enough. Well, you don't need enough if you're working towards a goal, right? When you're focused on creating, you're not consuming. I said this in one of the podcasts that I was interviewed for. It's a concept that, again, with balance of have-tos and want-tos, in your life, you need to also create balance between creation and consumption. And when we get to a certain age, we consume. And we consume more than we go and produce, right? So, my coach, Brooke Castillo, says this, and I believe this is very, very true. Discomfort is the currency of success. At the end of everything successful is a journey that's difficult. Matt, perfect example, you just finished your triathlon. How easy was that triathlon for you? Chime below. And I know from your post, and I know from talking with you, that you did one step better than you did last time, and last time you were last. But how good did that feel? One step further, challenge yourself one step more. Those of us who can't take on a new challenge are doomed to fall back. We're doomed to sit in burnout, in overwhelm, in anger, in stress, in frustration. That's where we sit until we're willing to take on a challenge. I'll share with you guys my latest challenge that my coach Dave Moreno put me on, and it was basically a 30-day challenge, and I had to start with just 7 days. And my challenge was waking up at 5:45 every morning, doing 30 minutes of something that's going to make me sweat, journaling, and creating, comments and love messages for my wife and my loved ones. That's what I've been doing. I'm on day 7. The first 3 days were brutal. The second 3 days were harder, and I'm on day 7, and it was much, much easier. And now I feel accomplished, and I feel like I can take on the world. It's amazing what happens when you start out your day with accomplishment and doing something hard, right? Yeah, so there you go. Matt's a perfect example. Worked hard, felt great. And I think as men, we need to work hard. And as men, we need a challenge. We cannot be idle. That is going to make us unhappy. And I think it's made a generation of us unhappy. So I'm going to leave you with this. This is your challenge this week. This is your challenge when you wrap up all of March. I want you to look at what you're doing right now, what's routine, and what's something that you've been wanting to challenge yourself with and you haven't done yet. If you need help with this, reach out to me. My link is below to the burnout quiz. You can also on my website, set up a call with me. We can talk. Let's just set up a goal. I can help you in 1 hour set up a goal for yourself, set up a challenge for yourself that you can then take and go and execute. And if you want, Chris, yeah, you like that? I want you to try something. Text me. I'll hold you accountable, even if it's through Facebook. Message me. I'll hold you guys accountable. I love accountability. I think it's important for us men to be able to lean on each other and to say, you know what, hit that milestone. And I think if you guys need to dive deeper and you need someone on a bigger, larger goal plan, that's what I do. I will help you to get through this burnout phase and through the fog, set up your action plan, and get to the finish line. So if this sounds like something that you guys would be interested in, definitely drop me a line. If not, stay tuned for next month, which I'll be diving into overwhelm. Overwhelm is in my opinion, the opposite of burnout. It's when you're just hustling, you're spinning, you're running 10 on the treadmill. Burnout is 0, overwhelm is 10, and that's also unhealthy. It'll lead to certain things. I'm very experienced in burnout and overwhelm, so I can't wait to dive into that. Next week is going to be a bonus week. I have a really cool lesson planned, and it's more of a, just a high-level lesson. But I hope you guys enjoyed this March Burnout series. Share it with a friend. Tag someone below that you think would get some value from it. And like I said, if you haven't taken the Burnout quiz, download it. The link is below. I appreciate everyone who showed up today. Thanks, Chris, Matt, James, Steve. You guys are awesome. Ben, I can't wait to see you on our next call. And you guys take it easy. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.